Hey everyone, this is the 2021 ranking video for all of the Halo Wars 2 leaders. This is something I do annually on the channel, and I'll leave links down below to the previous rankings for 2020 and 2019. This year, a lot's changed, and that's mostly because I wanted to play more leaders that I don't normally play as in this year, and I think I have some different opinions than I did last year. So I'm going to throw up the rankings from last year, 2020, so you can see what the rankings were, and let's go ahead and get into it. Starting with the S tier, these are the best of the best. These are leaders that you really should consider playing as. You're going to have a very strong chance of winning. I put Colony and Vortis in this category. I think Colony is really self-explanatory. The combat repair is awesome. He has one of my most favorite and tanky hero units in the Hunter Captain. And of course, the skitters make everything really, really difficult and gives it an offensive advantage. With Vortis, the infusion that he can spew everywhere is awesome. The volatile scarab is probably the most OP scarab in the game. The infused engineers are really great too. So Vortis has a lot going for him, and he's one of those different kind of characters where you need to play a decent bit to understand, but once you do, you'll really get to learn to love Vortis. Next is the A tier. These are leaders that I really do recommend you play as, and they're some of my favorites. It's Atriox, Decimus, and Cutter. Atriox has always been kind of one of those higher tiered leaders, I think, really since the game came out. I don't really think of any time when Atriox was a bad leader. And that trend kind of continues. I don't really think a whole lot changed in Atriox with the balance changes that we saw in 2020. So not much has changed. He still has a great hero unit. He has a lot of awesome powers. And he has the advantage of the early game with the jump pack brutes, dropping the mines if you get countermeasures. Decimus, I think we can all relate to why Decimus is so good. It's due to all of his passive powers just end up stacking on top of each other, and he really can become annoying. I know a lot of people like to spam Banshees when they play as Decimus for the Banshees having a stronger attack, and of course the Boundless Siphon. But in reality, I say this multiple times, and I've made videos on it, Deci Banshees are not as good as people think they are. Objectively, he's not, but he's still a good leader. He has two great hero units, so Decimus is one of my favorites. Next is Cutter. I can't say enough good things about Captain Cutter. He is just one of those leaders that can really, as the game goes on and he gets more powers, he can really just kind of take you apart by 1,000 wounds kind of a thing. Almost all of his powers are active, and he has so many drops. I think he has like 3 unit drops with the ODSTs, the ODST Assault Group, and then the Cyclops drop. And then you have other great support ones as well with the Close Air Support, the Archer Missiles, and the Turret drop. And people really underestimate that Cyclops drop, but let me tell you, that is such a good power, especially if you have an opponent that's going heavy vehicles, of course. Captain Cutter is great. Next is the B tier. These are some heroes or leaders I recommend you play if you know, some of your other teammates have stronger leaders. So these are Forge, Shipmaster, and Yap Yap. Forge, Forge kind of, I had a difficult time placing him, whether it be the A tier or the B tier. And I put the B tier, and, you know, he's great with Grizzlies, of course. He has some really good drops, especially with the Kodiaks. I love that drop. And the Forge Hog is fantastic too. But if my memory serves me right, I think Forge's Warthog got nerfed a little bit in these patches. And, you know, Grizzlies are just so slow. You really need to get the Pelican transport if you're going to play on a big map in case someone attacks you while you send all of your Grizzlies off. So Forge is good, and I like him a lot, but I wouldn't say he's one of the best in the game. Shipmaster, I hate Shipmaster, so if I could skip ranking Shipmaster, I would, but he has some great powers. I mean, you can't really deny that the powers that Shipmaster has is really good. Tactical Gateway is really awesome as well, and Shipmaster's hero unit is really good too. The Honor Guard is a really strong hero unit. Next is Yap Yap. I like Yap Yap a lot for the same reasons that I like Captain Cutter. He has a lot of drops. Yap Yap also has the Grunt Mechs with the healing ability. The healing ability is so underutilized and so underrated, I think, from a lot of players that they don't realize how good it is. You can heal a Scarab with the Grunt Mechs pretty quickly. Heal a base, your allies' units. I mean, anything. The Grunt Mechs are great, and you get 3 of them. And, you can kind of stagger out these heals if you want to kind of give your army a longer lasting health advantage over your opponents. They have so many other great abilities, like the Shade Turret drop. He gets the beam. The ultimate ability where it drops all of the methane. It looks just like a scatter bomb, but it leaves methane everywhere. I like the addition of the methane wagons to give your infantry a little bit of an advantage. Please Don't Shoot Me, I think, is a unique power, and of course the droppable shield that Yap Yap has. The shield turret is great too. So I think Yap Yap's a lot of fun to play as, and if you're one of those people that did not get the season pass and you don't have Yap Yap and you're considering purchasing a single leader that you may or may not own, I would strongly advise you to go for Yap Yap just because he's so much fun to play as. And I love the voice acting too for when buildings are constructed with Yap Yap. The C tier, these are leaders that I think need a little bit of help in upcoming balance patches, if we ever get any, that is. But these are leaders that I think need some help with a variety of reasons. I'll name them off here. Johnson, Jerome, Anders, Arby, and Cansano. There's a lot of UNSC leaders in this tier, and it kind of goes to that Banished is always better than UNSC when it comes to Halo Wars 2. By and large, UNSC is just weaker than the Banished. And there's a lot of reasons for it. The UNSC does not have shields on their bases like the Banished do. They can't cloak their bases like the Banished can. But also their units are usually just not as good as their Banished counterparts. Unfortunately, the Cyclops is not as good as Hunters. Flamethrowers and even you could even throw in snipers are just not as good as Rangers. The list kind of goes on and on that the Banished have just more versatile units in various categories. I mean, for building killers, the UNSC has, maybe flamethrowers and maybe scorpion tanks you could throw in there, but the Banished have dedicated building killer units in the Locusts and the Jump Pack Brutes. So just UNSC is not very good, and that's kind of why a lot of the UNSC leaders are ranked down here. Johnson, he's very one-dimensional. If you go up someone who's playing Johnson, they're going to make a lot of mechs, so you either go air or make anti-vehicle, and you're probably going to beat Johnson that way. With Jerome, I think Jerome's really good, but I don't know. Jerome's just never really clicked for me. And I'm not sure if you feel that way either. I know a lot of people love playing as Jerome, especially that Omega team drop. But there's just something with Jerome that doesn't make him as good as he used to be. Anders is also kind of one-dimensional as well. You can kind of predict that Anders is going to go Siege because of the Sentinels. For whatever reason, I see people making mass Sentinels with Anders, even though they're terrible. Arby... Arby is really good, and I think when it comes to Arby, you got to learn how Conduit of Rage really works, and when you get Arby really developed and you get a lot of powers, Arby can be pretty nasty. However, I think especially in the early parts of the game, Arby's fairly weak, and there's not really a whole lot that helps him out. I do like the Elite Enforcers and the Phantoms, though, that Arby has. It's quite cheddarful. And my dearest Morgan Cansano, how far you have fallen, dear Morgan. Morgan was such a good leader for such a long time, especially when she came out. It was so good. But unfortunately, Cansano kind of sucks, and I hate saying that because I love Cansano. I wish they would add some things into Cansano, like how come Serena gets Frost Siege, but Cansano doesn't get Flame Siege? I just feel like that's kind of unfair to Cansano. The Flame Warthogs just aren't that good. There's, some discussions that even getting the upgrade for the Flame Hogs makes them worse than just keeping them at their base. Cansano doesn't really have any unique units. I think the only unique unit Cansano has is the Flame Hog. The Inferno is great for dropping at bases, but it's kind of terrible when you drop it on a bunch of units. The flame missiles that Cansano has is pretty good too, but again, it's better just to drop it on a base than on units. And, you know, I think Cansano's hero unit's really unique and cool, but Cansano can't attack air. And that's the case for a lot of the leaders. But I think Cansano kind of really falls apart against air with the combination of the hero unit and the flame hogs not being either can't attack air at all or not being good against air, period. Finally is the D tier. Please don't play as any of these leaders. They're terrible. It's Pavium, Serena, and Isabel. And I like Pavium when he first came out because I thought Pavium was made for me. You know, he's a defensive super turtle leader with the mega turrets and burnout and, you know, the hero unit's drone, Pavium's drone, heals bases. It's just so cool. However, Pavium's terrible. He's not that good. You know, burnout's really cool, even though it keeps getting nerfed into oblivion. You know, I think his hero unit's pretty neat, especially if you shove Pavium in a bunker. You're going to have yourself a good time, especially if you drop that in front of an opponent's base in the early parts of the game, because Pavium, of course, will shoot opponents, and then when your opponents shoot at you, your drone will just heal the bunker, and it makes it awesome. Awesome and hilarious. But other than that, Pavium's really weak. We see a lot of players invest too heavily in mega turrets, and that really stacks up against you because not only do the mega turret costs stack up each time you build them, but the mega turrets aren't going to be used all the time, whereas if you had some sort of economic building like a harvester or a generator, you're going to be earning supplies all the time. So it's kind of like a lose-lose if you go mega turrets. And there's too many maps that are too big that don't really work in Pavium's favor. I can't tell you how much I've wanted to have a really, really good turtle as Pavium on Sentry, but it never happens. So Pavium's not that good. His powers aren't that good. The Lich is cool, but that's about it. Serena, I think Serena just is kind of bad. She's pretty good when she's fully developed and these powers are used kind of together with one of your allies. So, for example, you kind of freeze everything, and then your allies can either drop a beam or an inferno or something. It's pretty cool once you can do some of these combinations of powers, but I think just standalone, Serena's kind of bad. And that's just kind of how she is. She's also one-dimensional. You're going to expect if someone plays as Serena, they're going to be using a lot of things that benefit from a lot of the cryo enhancements. So the cryo troopers, maybe you'll see a few watchtowers for the cryogenic advances. You'll see Serena probably go for leader powers more often. Those sorts of things, and not necessarily big, strong units that would be more beneficial in games and matches. Lastly is Isabel. And I like Isabel a lot. Ironically, Isabel was the leader I used when we recorded both our 3.5-hour turtle game and our 4.5-hour turtle game. And Isabel was fantastic on Sentry with Super Turtles. And I think Isabel just really benefits from maps like Sentry, but she kind of really falls apart in a bunch of other maps. And I don't think Isabel's really good. And to be honest, I'm not quite sure what she needs. I guess maybe some buffs in some places because I like Isabel's powers a lot and I love Ghost in the Machine. She just doesn't perform as well as some of these other leaders. And I'm not sure if that's Isabel's fault or the other leaders' fault for being so good. But Isabel just isn't that awesome, unfortunately. Well, I think that's my list for 2021. I know this makes people upset. I should have probably said this at the top, but if this really makes you upset, you can go seek unemployment immediately. If not, yeah, please file a complaint on our Discord server. We have a hate mail channel. Feel free to put your hate mail there, and we will get legal involved, and we will process that accordingly, and perhaps even have an internal investigation. We try to make Team Respawn the most bureaucratic, messiest organization known to man. I mean, if you think the government's bad, losing paperwork and taking forever to get things done, you have not lived until you've spent a day in the Team Respawn offices, particularly in the UK branch. We've had issues with our employees over on that branch. Anyway, I digress. I'd love to know what your thoughts are on this list. Please let me know in the comments down below what your ranking is. What's your favorite leader in Halo Wars 2? And if there was a balance change to happen to any leader, what would you pick and why? I'd love to know your thoughts down below. Again, if you want to check out the rankings for the previous years in Halo Wars 2, I'll leave a link to those down below. And if you want early access to all Team Respawn videos, join our Patreon page, where all of our Patreon members get early access to every video, along with other cool perks. All right, that does it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you, James.